This is the screencast for Lesson 32 in Stephen's C# 24-hour trainer. The focus of this lesson is using the clipboard, and we're going to build a small program that gets a file list from a clipboard and does something with it. So I've built this small test program. It just has a text box where the user can enter a directory name and then a backup button. And in here is where we want to add our code. What we want this code to do is get the file drop list from the clipboard, if there is one there, loop through the files and copy them into that backup directory that the user entered in the text box. So first, we need to find out if there is a file list on the clipboard. In general, whenever you work with the clipboard, you need to make sure the data you want is there before you try to use it. So I'm going to say if clipboard dot contains file drop list, and you can see there are other contains methods here for other data types. Then we're going to go ahead and do our work. So first, I want to get the backup directory. To make working with it easier, I'm going to create a directory info. So directory info dir info equals new directory info, and then whatever path the user entered in that text box. Now I want to create that directory. I want to ensure that it exists. If it already does exist, no problem. But in case it doesn't, I'm going to call the directory info's create method. If the directory already exists, this won't do anything, so there's no harm done. If the directory doesn't exist, this will create that directory. If the directory is at the end of a long path, like c:/temp/data/January/backups, this method will create all of the intermediate directories if it needs them. So next, I want to start processing the files. So we're going to loop through the files in the file drop list. The drop list is just basically a bunch of strings, so we'll just loop through them using for each string file name in clipboard.getFileDropList. All right, so at this point we have one of the file names. To make working with it a little bit easier, I'm going to create a file info object. I'm going to pass the constructor the file's name. So now this is a file info object representing that file. The main reason I want this is I want to be able to pull the file's name off of its path, and in the file drop list these file names include the entire path. We don't want that for this. Alright, so now I have the file name. What I want to do is add that to the directory info's path. So we're looking at files in the backup directory, and I want to add an extra extension at the end of this thing's name. It's going to have the form .000, .001, .002, and so forth. And we'll keep doing that until we find a file name that isn't already in the backup directory. So to do that, I'm going to make a for int I equals 0 I++ loop. Notice I'm not putting in a stopping condition here, so this loop will execute forever. So somewhere inside the loop we have to have a way of breaking out of it. So now we have the directory, we have the file, we have this number I. We need to use those to build a new file name. So string new file name equals, to do this I'm going to combine the directory info's path with the file's name, not counting its path, and then add the .001 and so forth. So I'm going to use path.combine, and I want to combine the dirinfo dot full name and the file info dot file name. And then I want to add on some things. I'm going to add the dot and I formatted properly. Okay, so there's our file name. Now let's check to see if this file already exists in the backup directory. So if not file.exists, new file name, that means the file does not already exist. We're going to use it. So let's copy the file to this location. So I'm going to say fileinfo dot copy to new file name. That's all you need to do to copy the file. And now I need to get out of this loop. I don't want to go ahead and check these other values of I and create a whole bunch of copies of the same file. So I'll just say break. That breaks me out of the most closely enclosing loop. So at the end of this, at this point, we've finished looping through all the files. At the end of this, this is, if you recall, this bracket closes the if clipboard.contains file drop list. So after that, I'm going to display a message box to let the user know that we're done. And hopefully that's it. Let's run the program. Here it is. By default, I've just picked a spot on my desktop to back up files. Now before I can back up files, I need to find some files to back up. So let me see. This is the source code for this program. This is just the properties directory. Oh, let me get out of there and let's back up these files. These are the source files. So I select them all, and you can press Control-C, or you can right-click and select Copy. Let's get rid of that and click Backup. It says done. That's all good. Let's go into this backups directory, and there are the files it created. You can see form1.cs.000 and so forth. Let's go back in there again. Those files are still in the file drop list, so I'll leave them there, and I'm going to click Backup again. And you'll see this time it's created the same file names but with the .001 extension. And you can continue doing that. This directory will just get more and more files in it as much as you like. If you want to build a facility kind of like this, you might want to have some sort of a purge method that would go through and delete all except the most recent versions of each file. So in this case, it would flush out all the .000 files and keep the .001 files. If you go that route, be sure you also check, depending on how you're doing your backups, if you're backing up from multiple directories, you may have some files that are on one version, maybe .001, while there are other files whose most recent version is only .000. And that's it for this example.